This episode includes mentions of sexual violence, including rape, as part of the historical events discussed. It will not include graphic details, but the topic itself may be distressing. Please listen with care, and feel free to skip this episode if you need to. Next up on our Black History Month episodes is Marsha P. Johnson. She was born on August 24th, 1945, in New Jersey, the fifth of seven kids in a working class family. Marsha grew up in a religious family and started wearing women's clothes at age 5, but promptly stopped due to bullying and experiencing a sexual assault from a 13-year-old boy. After graduating high school, Marsha moved to New York City with one bag of clothes and $15 in her pocket. She struggled to make ends meet while working as a waiter. Her primary source of income became sex work, but it ultimately came with its own set of challenges, such as dealing with abusive clients and getting arrested from time to time by the police. All of that income combined was not enough to sustain herself, leaving her homeless. Shortly after moving to New York, 17-year-old Marsha met 11-year-old Sylvia Rivera, a Puerto Rican transgender girl. They became instant friends. Sylvia later said that Marsha was like a mother to her and taught her to love herself and her identity. Despite struggling in New York, it was the place where she was able to truly be herself. She began wearing women's clothes once more and found a sense of freedom. She went by a few names before deciding on Marsha P. Johnson. The P stands for Pay It No Mind. Her last name derives from the restaurant chain Howard Johnson. Marsha always identified as a gay person, drag queen, transvestite. Throughout my research, I've discovered some contradicting information about Marsha's gender identity. The confusion stems around the word transgender. Because Marsha never said herself that she was transgender, some reports tend to mention that maybe she wasn't, because of the ambiguity of her gender expression. At the same time, we have to recognize that the term transgender was not being used interchangeably, nor was it popular when Marsha was alive. Whether Marsha would have identified as a transgender person would have been ultimately for her to decide, but we can all agree that Marsha was definitely gender nonconforming. Marsha was one of the many protesters involved in the 1969 Stonewall riots. Her involvement has been publicly disputed, as she stated herself that she arrived there an hour after it had started, but nonetheless, she was there. Anywho, in the early morning, police raided Stonewall Inn, a gay bar. This was part of a string of raids and harassment by the police. Frustration was already at an all-time high. The patrons fought back, and thus ensued a riot. When Marsha arrived there at 2 a.m., she felt like she had nothing else to lose, culminating from years of oppression. On separate accounts, she was seen throwing a shot glass at a mirror, climbing a lamppost, and dropping a heavy bag on a police car's windshield, shattering it. The most notable part for me while doing a deep dive into Marsha's story is how Black, trans people, and gender non-conforming people were treated in gay spaces. But that's a topic for another day. The Stonewall riot catapulted the gay rights movements to new heights. Marsha was early involved and excited about the work, but quickly fell back once she realized that conversations were centered around white gays and lesbians, and were excluding transgender people and LGBTQ people of color. She actively spoke out about the transphobia in the early gay rights movement. Then in 1970, Sylvia Rivera came to Marsha with the idea of opening a home to help young trans people living off the streets. They founded STAR. STAR stands for Street Transvestite Activist Revolutionaries. The first STAR house was in the back of an abandoned truck in Greenwich Village. Sylvia and Marsha hustled to put food on the table every morning, serving 24 people. They then moved and fixed up a dilapidated building, but they got evicted after 8 months, once they were unable to make the rent payments. Throughout the 1970s, despite Marsha's popularity, she lived a life of poverty and danger. She was known as Saint Marsha in Greenwich because she was always willing to give people clothes and food, even though she didn't have much. She also started performing with a drag troupe called Hot Peaches and got the attention of the pop artist Andy Warhol, who included her in a series of prints in 1975 titled Ladies and Gentlemen. Sadly, in 1990, Marsha contracted AIDS. She spoke publicly about it and always hoped that one day people wouldn't stigmatize those with the virus. 2 years later, on July 6, 1992, Marsha's body was found floating in the Hudson River. Police initially classified it as a suicide, but her friends disagreed because 1992 was the worst year on record for anti-LGBTQ violence according to the New York Anti-Violence Project. It was more likely that Marsha was murdered because statistically, trans women, especially women of color, were regular targets of hate crimes. Hundreds of people showed up at Marsha's funeral. It was so crowded that people were standing in the streets. After Marsha's case was closed for decades, the New York Police Department reopened it in 2012. The case remains unsolved. Marsha was deeply loved. The amount of people who showed up at her funeral showed that. She remains one of the most admired LGBTQ advocates.